The wind tugged at Emily's bright pink scarf as she ran, the cold air burning her lungs with every breath. Her boots left deep prints in the thick, untouched snow, and the crisp forest air filled her nose with the scent of pine and frost. She could still hear the faint whimper behind her, the helpless sound that had stirred something fierce and protective inside her young heart. Emily's small hands clenched into fists as she thought about the dog, left all alone and tied up like some forgotten treasure. "I have to save him," she whispered to herself. "I can't let him freeze." The forest path was tricky, narrow, winding, and littered with hidden branches under the snow. Her sled dragged unevenly behind her, bumping over frozen roots. But she didn't slow down. She barely noticed the snowflakes that clung to her eyelashes or the stinging bite of cold on her cheeks. Her whole world had shrunk to one urgent mission. She thought about the last time she had seen a dog this big, her neighbor's Labrador, Max. Max was friendly and gentle, always eager to play fetch. This shepherd, however, looked scared, as if the world had turned harsh and cruel overnight. Emily's chest tightened with sorrow. How had someone done this to such a loyal creature? The question buzzed in her mind like a relentless winter fly. At the edge of the forest, the village lay quiet, its chimney smoke curling upward like lazy ghosts. Emily's house stood at the end of Maple Lane, a cozy place with red shutters and a bright yellow door. She darted inside, where warmth immediately wrapped around her like a soft blanket. Her mother looked up from the kitchen table, a faint worry in her eyes. "Emily, where have you been? It's freezing out there." Emily's lips pressed into a determined line. "Mom, there's a dog, a big shepherd, tied up in the forest, and he's hurt and cold. I need a blanket, and can I have Dad's pocket knife?" Her mother's expression shifted from confusion to concern, but she trusted Emily's earnestness. "All right, but be careful. Don't go too far." Emily nodded quickly, grabbing a thick wool blanket from the couch. She rushed to her father's workshop at the back of the house, where the old tools hung neatly on the wall. The pocket knife was a small but sturdy one, its blade sharp and reliable. She tucked it safely into her coat pocket. Outside again, the cold slapped her cheeks, but Emily barely noticed. The snow crunched under her boots as she retraced her steps toward the forest, her breath steaming in the frosty air. The sun hung low behind the trees, casting long shadows over the white landscape. The wind had grown stronger, rattling branches and swirling snow in little ghostly drifts. Emily's pace quickened, urgency driving her forward. Then she saw him again, the shepherd, lying weakly against the tree, the rope still biting into his fur. His eyes, dark and trusting, flicked up when he heard her approach. Emily knelt carefully beside him, draping the blanket gently over his trembling body. The dog let out a soft, grateful whimper and pressed his cold nose into her palm. Her fingers brushed his fur, feeling the rough patches in the dirt, but mostly the quiet strength beneath it. Taking a deep breath, Emily pulled the pocket knife from her coat and began to work on the rope knot. It was tight and old, twisted cruelly, but her small hands were steady and determined. Minutes passed like hours as she struggled, but finally the knot loosened. The rope fell away, and the shepherd stirred, pushing weakly against her hands. Emily smiled, her heart swelling with relief. "You're free now, boy." The dog tried to stand but wobbled, his legs unsteady. Emily wrapped the blanket tighter around him and helped him onto the sled. The journey back wouldn't be easy. The sled was small and the dog was heavy and fragile, but Emily didn't hesitate. With one hand holding the blanket wrapped around the shepherd and the other gripping the sled's rope, she started the long trek back. The cold air stung her face, the snow deepened, and the forest seemed darker now, but Emily's resolve burned brighter than ever. As she pulled the sled through the snow, the shepherd leaned his head against her side. For a brief moment, everything else, the cold, the fear, the loneliness, melted away. In that quiet bond between a girl and a dog, A spark of hope was born. The village was just waking up as Emily trudged through the knee-deep snow, dragging her sled carefully behind her. Each breath came out in frosty clouds, and her boots left a trail of prints that quickly disappeared under fresh snowfall. The sun was still low on the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the frozen rooftops and icicles hanging from gutters like crystal daggers. Emily's mind replayed the sight of the shepherd, tied up and trembling in the cold forest. Her heart ached at the memory of those sad, fearful eyes. How could someone do such a thing? The thought made her fists clench involuntarily, but she also felt a spark of pride. She had found him, and she was going to help him. As she approached the small clearing where she had first spotted the dog, Emily slowed down, suddenly aware of the stillness around her. The only sounds were the soft crunch of snow underfoot and the occasional distant call of a bird. But that soft whimper came again, faint, weak, but unmistakable. There he was. The German shepherd lay huddled beneath a cluster of bare branches, his large frame shivering uncontrollably. His fur was matted with ice and snow, and patches of his coat had fallen away, revealing sore, raw skin beneath. His eyes met Emily's as she knelt down slowly, careful not to startle him. The dog's whimper turned into a soft bark, barely audible, and his tail gave a weak wag. Emily reached out, her fingers trembling from the cold but gentle as she brushed away snow from his muzzle. The dog leaned into her touch, trusting her in a way that surprised her. Emily's mind raced. She needed to free him, but the rope was still tight around his neck, cutting into his fur and skin. She rummaged in her coat pocket for the pocket knife and pulled it out. Her hands were numb, but she gripped the blade firmly and set to work. The knot was old and complicated, twisted cruelly by whoever had left the dog here. Emily struggled to find the right angle to cut without hurting him. She whispered softly to calm him down. "It's okay, Braveheart. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." Minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the scraping of the blade and the dog's shallow breaths. Then, with a small snap, the rope gave way. Emily gently lifted the dog's head and began to untie the rest. Once freed, the shepherd pushed himself up, legs shaking but determined. Emily helped him into a sitting position and wrapped the thick blanket around him, holding him close against the biting cold. The dog leaned heavily against her, eyes half closed in relief. Emily could feel his rapid heartbeat beneath her hands and the warmth of his fur seeping into her gloves. She smiled, her heart swelling with hope. But the shepherd was still weak. His ribs showed through his thin coat, and his legs wobbled when he tried to stand. Emily knew she couldn't leave him there, not with the cold growing harsher and nightfall creeping closer. She looked around for a safe way to get him back to the village. The sled was small but sturdy enough. Carefully, she helped the dog onto it, wrapping the blanket tighter to keep him warm. Pulling the sled through the snow was exhausting, and the path back was steep and slippery. More than once, Emily stumbled, her boots catching on hidden roots and rocks. But every time she fell, she got back up, driven by a fierce determination that surprised even her. The shepherd rested his head on her knee as they moved slowly through the trees. Emily whispered stories to him about warm fires, hot food, and kind people who would help him. She promised him safety and care, even though she wasn't sure how she would manage it all. By the time Emily reached the edge of the forest, the sky had turned a pale lavender, streaked with pink. She could see the rooftops of her village glowing softly in the distance, like tiny islands of warmth in the cold sea of white. Her heart was pounding, not just from the effort, but from the weight of what she had done. She had found a lost, hurt soul and refused to turn away. And now, with every step closer to home, that small spark of courage grew stronger. Emily glanced down at the shepherd, who looked up at her with trusting eyes. "We're almost there," she said softly. "Just a little further." Together, girl and dog moved forward through the snow, two unlikely companions bound by an unspoken promise. To survive, to heal, and to never be alone again. The snow was falling harder now, thick flakes swirling in the cold wind as Emily carefully pulled the sled along the narrow village path. Her legs ached from the effort, but she barely noticed. The shepherd lay wrapped in the blanket, his breathing shallow but steady. Emily kept one hand resting gently on his side, hoping her warmth could reach through the fabric and soothe him. The houses she passed were quiet, curtains drawn and smoke curling from chimneys like lazy wisps. The villagers were still indoors, sheltered from the harsh winter morning. Emily didn't stop. She couldn't. Every second felt urgent, like time was slipping through her fingers like snow melting in a warm hand. The shepherd's eyes flickered open occasionally, showing moments of pain and confusion. Emily whispered soothing words, hoping to ease his fear. "You're safe now, Braveheart. I won't let anything happen to you." Her mind raced with questions she wasn't ready to answer. Who had done this to him? Why had they left him tied up and alone in the freezing forest? The thought made her chest tighten with anger and sadness. Ahead, the village school bell tolled faintly, reminding Emily that she should be inside, warm and safe with her family. But she had a mission that was bigger than school or play. She reached the edge of the village and spotted Mr. Benson, the carpenter, working outside his workshop. The old man paused and looked up as Emily approached, the sled struggling behind her. "Emily, what are you doing out here this early?" he asked, concern knitting his brows. "There's a dog tied up in the forest," she said breathlessly. "He's hurt and cold. Please, can you help me get him to the vet?" Mr. Benson didn't hesitate. He dropped his tools and rushed over to help. Together, they lifted the shepherd gently off the sled and into the back of the old pickup truck. The dog let out a faint whimper but didn't resist. "Good girl, Emily," Mr. Benson said with a nod. "Let's get him warm." The engine rumbled to life, and they drove carefully through the village streets toward the vet's clinic, a small brick building with a red door and a glowing sign. Inside, the vet, Dr. Lang, was waiting, her face serious but kind. Dr. Lang knelt beside the shepherd, examining him quickly. "He's suffering from hypothermia and dehydration," she explained. "We need to warm him slowly and give him fluids right away." Emily stayed close, holding Braveheart's paw in her hand. The dog's eyes met hers, tired but trusting. Emily felt tears prick her cheeks. The vet's office was warm and smelled of antiseptic and medicine. Braveheart was wrapped in heated blankets and given fluids through a small tube. Emily watched as the color slowly returned to his gums, and the shivering lessened. "You did a brave thing, Emily," Dr. Lang said softly. "If you hadn't found him when you did, he might not have made it." Emily swallowed hard. She hadn't thought of it like that before. To her, she had just followed her heart. As the hours passed, more villagers heard the story and began to arrive at the clinic. They brought food, blankets, and words of encouragement. Emily's parents finally showed up, wrapping her in a warm hug and praising her courage. But Emily's thoughts were still with Braveheart, lying quietly in the corner of the room, slowly regaining strength. That night, as snow continued to fall outside, Emily stayed by his side. She whispered stories about the warm spring days ahead and the adventures they would have together. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. She had saved a life, and in doing so, found a new friend who needed her just as much as she needed him. The next morning, the village awoke to a world wrapped in white silence. Snow continued to fall softly, coating every roof, tree, and street lamp in a pristine blanket. Inside the warm walls of the vet's clinic, Braveheart rested comfortably, his breathing steady and peaceful. Emily sat nearby, her eyes heavy with fatigue but shining with hope. Despite his weakened state, Braveheart's eyes followed her every move. It was as if he understood that this little girl had risked everything to save him. Emily gently stroked his fur, feeling a silent bond growing between them. Just as Emily was about to lean back and rest, Dr. Lang entered the room carrying a small notebook. "Emily," she said quietly, "there's something we need to talk about." Emily looked up, curious. and a little nervous. Dr. Lang sat beside her, flipping through her notes. Braveheart isn't just any lost dog, she explained. He has a microchip. Emily's eyes widened. What's a microchip? It's a tiny device implanted under the skin that helps identify pets and reunite them with their owners, Dr. Lang replied. I scanned him, and it gave me a name and an address, just a few miles from here. Emily's heart beat faster, so someone knows where he is. Yes, Dr. Lang said, but there's more. The chip shows that Braveheart belongs to a man named Thomas Keller, who lives on the edge of the village. But when I checked, his house appeared empty. No lights, no footprints in the snow. Nothing. Emily frowned, puzzled. Why would someone leave a dog tied up and alone if they were his owner? Dr. Lang shrugged. That's what we need to find out. It might be an accident, or something more. Emily's mind buzzed with questions. Who was Thomas Keller? Why was his house empty? And what had happened to Braveheart that left him in such a state? Determined to uncover the truth, Emily decided to visit the house after school. She told her parents about the microchip and the mystery surrounding the dog's owner. Her parents, though worried, understood her determination and promised to accompany her. Later that afternoon, as the pale winter sun dipped low, Emily and her parents approached the quiet house at the village's edge. The old wooden door was slightly ajar, creaking gently in the cold breeze. The windows were frosted over, and the garden was overgrown with wild shrubs buried beneath the snow. Emily felt a chill, not from the cold, but from the eerie silence that hung in the air. She stepped inside cautiously, her parents close behind. The inside was dusty and dark, the air heavy with neglect. They moved through the empty rooms, finding no sign of recent life. On a cluttered table, Emily noticed a small notebook lying open, its pages filled with hurried scribbles and sketches of a large dog. One entry caught her eye. Braveheart is restless. The woods are not safe anymore. Someone is watching us. Need to protect him. Emily's pulse quickened. What danger had Thomas Keller been trying to protect his dog from? And who was watching? Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from upstairs, a thud followed by a scraping sound. Emily's parents exchanged worried glances. Stay close, her father said, leading the way up the narrow staircase. At the top, the door to a bedroom was slightly open. Inside, they found signs of a hurried departure. Clothes scattered on the floor, a half-packed bag on the bed. Emily's mother picked up a folded letter from the desk. The handwriting was shaky, filled with urgency. If you find Braveheart, please help him. I fear for our safety. They want to take him away. Trust no one. Emily swallowed hard. This was no ordinary story. The dog's plight was tangled in a mystery darker than she could have imagined. Back downstairs, Emily looked at Braveheart's photo in the notebook and whispered, We'll find out what happened, Braveheart. I promise. Outside, the snow continued to fall, silent witnesses to secrets waiting to be uncovered. The chill of the village's winter evening seeped through the cracks of Emily's home as she sat curled up beside Braveheart. The shepherd's eyes, now brighter and more alert, followed her every move with a quiet gratitude that warmed her heart. Yet, the letter they had found in Thomas Keller's empty house lingered heavily in her mind. Who was they? And what danger were they running from? Emily's parents had agreed to help her investigate, but caution hung over their conversations like the thick fog that settled over the village at night. They knew the woods could hide more than just snow and silence. The next morning, Emily awoke early, excitement and worry tangled together in her chest. She had promised Braveheart she would protect him, and that promise fueled her determination. After breakfast, she bundled up in her warmest clothes and grabbed the notebook from Thomas Keller's house, a collection of sketches, notes, and cryptic warnings about shadows lurking in the forest. At school, Emily struggled to focus. Her friends chatted about snowball fights and sledding, but Emily's mind was elsewhere. The mystery was growing bigger, and she felt a strange pull to uncover the truth. During recess, she shared some of the story with her best friend, Lily. "Someone's after Braveheart," Emily whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "And they made Thomas Keller leave his home." Lily's eyes widened. "That's scary. But what can we do?" Emily smiled faintly. "We need to find out who they are and why they want the dog." Later that afternoon, Emily and her parents returned to the edge of the village, this time with Mr. Benson, the carpenter, who had become a trusted ally since the day Emily found Braveheart. The four of them walked slowly toward the forest where the shepherd had been tied up, hoping to find clues the first time they had missed. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches heavy with snow. The air was thick with cold and mystery. Emily's boots sank deep with each step, the silence around her growing heavier with every crunch. As they reached the clearing where Emily had first discovered Braveheart, something caught her eye. Faint footprints in the snow, too large to be hers, too fresh to have been there for long. She knelt down, tracing the path with gloved fingers. The prints led deeper into the woods. "Someone's been here recently," Emily said, voice barely above a whisper. Her father frowned. "We should be careful. We don't know who or what we're dealing with." The group followed the footprints cautiously, weaving between frosted trees and tangled bushes. After a few minutes, they came upon a small, hidden camp. The fire pit was cold, but smoke stains marked where a fire had recently burned. Nearby, a torn piece of fabric fluttered in the wind, caught on a branch. Emily picked it up. The fabric was thick, like the kind hunters or woodsmen wore. She examined it closely and spotted a symbol stitched into the corner, a circle with 3 intersecting lines. "Have you seen this before?" she asked Mr. Benson. He shook his head slowly. "No, but it looks like a mark of a group or clan. Maybe someone who spends a lot of time in the woods." Emily's heart pounded. Could this be connected to the threats in Thomas Keller's notebook? Was this group the they he feared? Suddenly, a rustle sounded from the bushes. Everyone froze. Braveheart stood, growling low and protective. Emily's eyes searched the trees until a shadow moved. Quick, silent, watching. A voice called out softly, "Who's there?" Emily took a shaky breath. "We're just looking for answers," she said. From the trees emerged a young man, bundled in a heavy coat, his face partly hidden beneath a hood. His eyes were sharp but cautious. He held up his hands, showing he meant no harm. "I know about Thomas Keller and Braveheart," he said quietly. "But it's not safe to talk here. Follow me." Emily glanced at her parents, who nodded reluctantly. Together, they followed the stranger deeper into the woods, the mysteries around Braveheart growing darker with every step. The forest grew denser as Emily and the others followed the stranger through winding paths, hidden beneath snow-laden branches. The air was thick with tension, broken only by the occasional crunch of footsteps and the distant call of a crow. Braveheart stayed close to Emily, his protective instincts sharpening with every step. The stranger finally stopped at the entrance of a small clearing, where a modest cabin stood half hidden behind a curtain of icicles and frost-covered bushes. Smoke curled lazily from its chimney, promising warmth and shelter from the biting cold. "This is where I live," the young man said, lowering his hood to reveal sharp green eyes and a scruffy beard. "Name's Lucas. I've been watching Thomas Keller's place ever since he disappeared." Emily's parents exchanged looks, silently weighing their options. Emily herself was eager but cautious. "Why have you been watching? And why did Thomas Keller leave?" Lucas sighed, rubbing his hands together for warmth. "It's complicated. Thomas and I were part of a group, hunters, in a way. We protect these woods from people who want to exploit them. Braveheart isn't just a pet. He's trained to sense danger, to guard something important." Emily's eyes widened. "What does he guard?" Lucas hesitated. "A secret, something that they, the ones Thomas feared, want to steal. When they came looking, Thomas had to run, but Braveheart was caught and left behind." Emily looked down at Braveheart, who seemed to understand. The dog let out a soft whine, nudging her hand for comfort. Lucas continued, "The group that wants this secret is dangerous. They're after a map Thomas was keeping, a map that leads to something powerful hidden in these woods. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could bring disaster." Emily felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. Why didn't Thomas tell anyone? Because he couldn't trust anyone, Lucas said bitterly. The group has spies everywhere, even in the village. Emily's parents looked alarmed. What can we do? Lucas glanced at the sky, now darkening with the early onset of winter night. First, we keep Braveheart safe. Then we find Thomas. If he's still alive, he might have the map hidden somewhere only Braveheart knows. Emily nodded. The weight of the secret settled on her shoulders, but so did a fierce determination. She had come too far to turn back now. The group settled inside the cabin. The fire crackled warmly, chasing away the chill. Lucas brewed tea while Emily gently cleaned Braveheart's wounds with supplies she brought from the vet. As she worked, she noticed Braveheart's ears twitch at every sound, his eyes sharp and alert despite his injuries. "What if they come here?" Emily whispered, voice low. Lucas met her gaze. "Then we'll be ready." The night deepened, and stories unfolded. Lucas shared tales of the group's mission to protect the forest, of the dangers they faced, and the sacrifices made. Emily listened, her respect growing for the man and the cause. Outside, the wind howled, but inside the cabin, hope flickered like the firelight, fragile but burning. Emily knew that tomorrow would bring more challenges. The mystery of Thomas Keller and the secret map was far from solved. But for the first time since finding Braveheart, she felt part of something greater, a fight to protect what was right. As she settled down beside Braveheart, she whispered, "We'll find him. Together." And somewhere in the snowy woods, the night held its breath, waiting for the next move in a game that was only just beginning. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the frost-covered windows of Lucas's cabin. Emily awoke to Braveheart's gentle nudge, his eyes bright with renewed strength. The warmth of the fire and the safety of the cabin had brought him back from the edge. But Emily's mind was already racing ahead to the next step, finding Thomas Keller and the secret he guarded. Over breakfast, Lucas spread out a tattered map across the wooden table. It was old, with faded lines and symbols marking parts of the forest, streams, and hills. "Thomas left this behind," Lucas said quietly. He believed it held the key to keeping the secret safe. Emily traced her finger over the map, recognizing parts of the woods she had walked through. One symbol caught her attention, a small X near a dense thicket, close to the spot where she had first found Braveheart. Could this be where Thomas hid the map or something important? She asked. Lucas nodded. It's possible, but it's risky. They will be looking for it too. Emily's parents, though worried, agreed to help. They packed supplies, ropes, flashlights, and blankets, preparing for a journey into the heart of the forest. As they stepped outside, the cold air bit at their cheeks, and the snow crunched beneath their boots. Braveheart led the way, moving with purpose, his instincts guiding the group through the frozen trees. The forest seemed alive, whispering secrets through the wind and creaking branches. Every shadow and sound made Emily's pulse quicken, but she kept her eyes on the map, determined not to lose her way. After an hour of trekking, they'd reached the marked spot, a cluster of ancient oak trees with twisted roots that seemed to grasp the earth like giant hands. The snow here was thinner, revealing patches of dark soil and scattered leaves. Emily knelt, brushing snow away from the ground. Her fingers felt something hard and cold, a metal box, partially buried. With Lucas's help, they carefully unearthed the box, its surface rusted but intact. Emily's heart pounded as she opened it, revealing a bundle of papers tied with a red ribbon and a small leather pouch. She untied the ribbon and unfolded the papers, sketches of the forest, notes in Thomas's handwriting, and a map that looked even more detailed than the one Lucas had shown them. "This is it," Emily breathed. This is what Thomas was protecting. Lucas examined the pouch and pulled out a small ornate key. "There's more to this mystery," he said. "This key might open a hidden chest or door somewhere." Suddenly, a snap echoed behind them. Everyone froze. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall, cloaked, and watching with cold eyes. "You shouldn't have come here," the stranger said, voice low and threatening. Emily instinctively stepped in front of Braveheart, who growled deeply. The stranger's eyes flicked to the dog, then back to the group. "You don't understand what you're messing with. Leave now or face the consequences." Emily's father tightened his grip on a nearby branch, ready to protect his family. But Emily, with fierce resolve, held up the key. "We won't leave until we know the truth." The stranger hesitated, then with a cold smile, melted back into the trees. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Lucas turned to Emily. "This is bigger than we thought. They are watching." Emily clenched the key in her hand. She knew the road ahead was dangerous, but she also knew they had come too far to stop now. As Braveheart nudged her gently, Emily whispered, "We'll keep fighting. For Thomas, for you, for the secret we all must protect." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers through the snow. The mystery deepened, but Emily's courage burned brighter than ever. The night air was biting cold as Emily, her parents, Lucas, and Braveheart hurried back toward the village. The weight of the key in Emily's pocket felt heavier than ever, as if it carried the responsibility of the entire mystery. The forest seemed darker, the shadows deeper, as if the woods themselves were warning them to turn back. But Emily's resolve was stronger than any fear. She thought about Thomas Keller's desperate letter, the tied-up shepherd she had found, and the secret that might change everything. Braveheart trotted close beside her, alert and steady, ready to protect. Back in the village, the warmth of their small home was a relief. Emily's parents helped her spread the new map and notes across the kitchen table. They pored over Thomas's sketches, piecing together what they had learned. Lucas pointed to a spot marked with the same symbol as the key, an old barn on the far edge of the village, long abandoned and rumored to be haunted. "That's where Thomas probably hid the chest," Lucas said. "We need to check it out, but carefully." Emily nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. She wasn't just a little girl anymore. She was part of something bigger, something worth fighting for. The next day, they set out for the barn, wrapped in scarves and coats, their breath clouding in the frosty air. Braveheart led confidently, as if he knew the way. The barn stood silent and imposing, its wooden doors weathered and cracked, its windows dark and frosted over. Emily's heart pounded as they pushed the heavy door open. Inside, the smell of hay and dust filled the air. Shadows flickered as the weak winter sunlight filtered through gaps in the walls. With trembling hands, Emily pulled out the key. The lock on an old chest near the back of the barn clicked open, revealing worn leather-bound books, old letters, and a small wooden box. Inside the wooden box lay a strange, glowing stone, smooth and warm to the touch. Thomas's notes explained it was a rare crystal with the power to protect the forest from harm, the secret that they wanted to steal. Emily held the stone carefully, feeling a deep sense of awe. This was the reason Thomas had risked everything, to keep the forest and its secrets safe. Suddenly, footsteps echoed outside. The group stiffened. "They have found us," Lucas whispered urgently. The barn door slammed open, and several shadowy figures entered, their faces hidden beneath dark hoods. The tension in the room thickened like the snow outside. But Emily stood tall, Braveheart growling fiercely by her side. One of the figures stepped forward. "Hand over the crystal, and we will let you go." Emily shook her head, voice steady despite the fear. "You won't take it. This forest is protected. We won't let you destroy it." A fierce standoff followed, the cold air crackling with tension. But then, from outside, the sound of sirens pierced the silence. The village patrol, alerted by Emily's parents earlier. The intruders hesitated, then fled into the night, disappearing like shadows swallowed by the snow. Emily let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The crystal was safe, for now. In the days that followed, Thomas Keller returned to the village, explaining how he had fled from the dangerous group, but had left clues for those brave enough to find him and protect the secret. Emily's bravery and kindness had saved not only Braveheart, but the entire forest. The villagers rallied to protect the woods, honoring the bond between humans and nature. Braveheart, now healthy and strong, became a symbol of hope and courage, a reminder that even the smallest among us can make the biggest difference. As winter thawed into spring, Emily often wandered the woods with Braveheart, feeling the quiet strength of the forest around her. She smiled, knowing she had been part of something extraordinary. And every time the wind whispered through the trees, it carried a secret message: courage, kindness, and hope could light even the darkest winter.